This is for my sophomore biology class, and I'm hoping that this is going to help you study and learn the material without my having to lecture the entire time that you're at school. We can concentrate more on hands-on activities. So this is a leaf cross-section. It's as though you sliced into the leaf and we're watching it from the side view. And you know some of these parts already. We have the cuticle on the outside and the palisade layer. And then right here in the middle is the spongy mesophyll. Oops. So in the spongy mesophyll, you know, there's airspace. And what we did in our lab is we infused this. We created a vacuum, infused it with some sodium bicarbonate. And if you'll notice, what's in the sodium bicarbonate, what it releases is CO2. And as most of us know, that's what the plant needs. That's one of the reactants in photosynthesis. And it's used in one of these little green organelles here called chloroplast. So we're going to take that chloroplast. And inside the chloroplast are these little things called thylakoids. And the thylakoids is where the magic happens. So this is really what is this membrane. This section here is actually double layer. We have a phospholipid bilayer, just as we always have. And what the thylakoid does, what it actually does is it arranges the photosystems in the electron transport chain in order to make some energy for the plant and for everything on Earth. So I want to take you to sort of an animation of photosynthesis. This is the sun beating down on the Earth. And just an example of a plant, and here we have our green leaves. So we have the sun beating down on the plant, and the plant is going to be using that light from the sun, plus the carbon dioxide that is constantly provided to the plant from the atmosphere, and then water to make a sugar and oxygen. And I'll have that labeled here in a second for you. So we have any kind of sugar, usually in the form of glucose, but those can be stacked up to make starches and cellulose and different carbohydrates. And of course molecular oxygen, which is, for us, we have to have that. So now, the sunlight goes in as well as the water and the carbon dioxide, and out comes oxygen, molecular oxygen for us. And this is where it happens. There are two main reactions inside the plant. That is the light-dependent reactions, depending on the sunlight, and then the carbon fixation, the Calvin cycle. So let's go over the light-dependent reactions first. The first thing that happens is water goes into the plant, and when sunlight hits the second photosystem, photosystem 2, water is split up, and immediately when that water is split up, that releases molecular oxygen for the rest of us. It also goes through a series of reactions that I'll be showing you in a moment, which releases these two energy high or very, very active energetic molecules that will supply energy to the Calvin cycle. And with that, this is where the carbon dioxide comes in. The carbon dioxide goes into the plant in whatever means, and the carbon or Calvin cycle will use that to make sugars for us. And those are light independent reactions. Some people refer to them as dark reactions. I need you to remember Calvin cycle. That's what I need you to remember. Okay, good. Light dependent reactions. Here's a close-up of our leaf and sunlight beaming down onto the leaf. We're going to go into the depths of this leaf to find the plant cell, obvious cell walls around it. They're more structured than animal cells, and this should tip you off. When you see a thick layer around each cell, you know it's a plant cell. Inside those cells are all of these chloroplasts, and we're going to concentrate on one of them. And then we see the inside of that chloroplast, and you all have made these diagrams. You've labeled them. We have the thylakoids. Let's start with the outer membrane, inner membrane. Remember that for the test. There are two layers of membranes. And then we have the thylakoid, and those are stacked into what we call granum. A whole stack of them is called a granum. Inside, in between the space of the outer and inner membrane and the thylakoids is what we call a stroma. That's where the dark reactions take place. Lumen, that's not a term that you need to know. Inside the thylakoid membrane, we have a series of photosystems. We have an electron transport chain, and we have ATP synthase. You do need to remember those. There are two photosystems. This is photosystem 1. This is photosystem 2. ATP synthase, electron transport chain. The first photosystem that's engaged with the sunlight would be photosystem 2. And keep that in mind. Photosystem 2 is hit with sunlight, and when water comes near that photosystem, it's immediately split apart. And what that does is it releases molecular oxygen that we have to use for any cellular processes. And when it releases the molecular oxygen, it also releases hydrogen ions, and those tend to build up inside the thylakoid. You'll see also electrons are released, and those are high energy electrons, and they're going to go down the electron transport chain, so they're transported through these proteins to the other photosystem. Hydrogen is building up inside that membrane the entire time. So now here we are at the first photosystem, and that one's also hit with sunlight, and that energizes those electrons to come over here. And what that's going to do is it's going to take a low energy molecule. This is known as an electron carrier molecule, NADP+. And when it comes here, it's going to become NADPH. It's going to be a very high energy molecule. And this is going to provide some of the energy to the Calvin cycle. Also, those hydrogens have been building up inside this membrane. You'll remember during diffusion when there's a high concentration on one side of the membrane and a low concentration on the other side, they tend to want to even out. But hydrogen inside this membrane is a little bit special because in order to get out, it goes through this enzyme. This is called ATP synthase. And what it does is it makes ATP out of ADP. ADP is a very low energy molecule. ATP is a very high energy molecule. It's direct energy for the cell. So hydrogen funnels through ATP synthase, And when it does this, it's not showing in this animation, but it spins. ATP synthase will spin. And ADP, that low energy molecule, comes near it and it's phosphorylated. That means it's added on a phosphorus. And it's like recharging your cell phone battery. So we're taking it at about half charged, and we're going to fully charge it in one fell swoop. So now we have a very energetic ATP molecule, and both ATP and NADPH are ready to help the Calvin cycle make some sugar for the rest of us. You can see that animation. Okay, let's do a brief overview of what I've already covered about one thylakoid and the outer and inner membrane, and what's going on inside that thylakoid that provides life to the rest of us. So we have the light reactions we've already covered, and during the light reactions, molecular oxygen is released, hydrogen builds up, NADP is energized, and ADP is energized to become ATP. Both of those molecules will meet in the Calvin cycle, and they provide all of the energy for the Calvin cycle. Some people do call them dark reactions. In the Calvin cycle, carbon dioxide teams up with a 3-carbon chain that's held within the plant cell, and that makes 5 carbon molecules. But they also need another carbon from carbon dioxide. Throughout this cycle, carbon dioxide is taken in, added to these 5 carbon chains. Those are again broken down, and then we make even more. More and more ATP is used, and you see how much energy is used by the plant. But a lot of it, and all of it, actually comes from the sun. All of that was made from the sunlight that the plant absorbs. Try to make this go faster. At the end of the Calvin cycle, we end up with 6-carbon, 6-carbon molecule that we otherwise know as sugar. I think that's about as close as I'm going to get to an overview. We'll get into more detail in class, but I'm hoping this will help you at home. At least make some sense of the material from the textbook.